Hello and welcome to this week's video, which is me having a play with a bit of colour, but before that a bit of texture and a little bit of off-centre turning. Unfortunately, I was so enjoying turning to the music of Leonard Cohen that I've had to turn all the sound off my recorded video so I don't breach any copyright, which is a shame because I'm sure you would have loved to watch me and hear me singing along with So Long Marianne and Like a Bird on the Wire and Chelsea Hotel, all those cheery numbers. Anyway, I will have to record a voiceover, which I'll do in a moment, and hope you enjoy what you see. Just have to be clear that the first bit of turning I didn't actually record, which was an off-centre turning, a little bit like this, where this was turned with a drilled hole in the back of the blank on chuck. So you actually see me clearing up the back of a piece that's had an off-centre little hollow put in it. Anyway, enough waffle. Let's get on with it. So here we go then. As you can see there, I think maybe I turned a tenon in the back there just with the wood between centres. To put that first off-centre hole in, trying to get myself away from the routine of the hole always being in the middle. And there was an interesting comment on the World of Woodturners when I posted this about why is there a hole in the centre? What's the purpose of it? Interesting. I'll leave that for you to mull over as we go through. So here I am using my 3/8 bowl gouge, cleaning off the back, then a parting tool to put a little recess in, just undercutting that slightly with a little shear scrape, and now a push cut just to shape the back of this. This is not something that I have entirely finished. The back hasn't been finished yet, but still good practice to work on your cutting technique and try out different shapes. This shallow kind of look of a bowl is sometimes difficult to get a pleasing curve on. If I'd liked this or felt it was better quality, I might have come back and tidied up the back a little bit. But there we go, we've got it reverse turned, and now I'm just cleaning up that face. It's a little bit skippy because of that hollow in there, so you've got to be careful not to put any forward movement on the tool. Once you've engaged the cut, just traverse across the tool rest so that you don't catch yourself into that hollow that's off center. And now here we go. Oh, it's a little bowl. It must have a hole in the middle. So I make a little hole in the middle, more for the sake of doing it than any conscious thought really, but also to practice a little bit of undercutting, so you get a nice shadow line. So to get round in that little hole opening there, I'm gone back to a 1/4 inch bowl gouge, which cuts very nicely. It's one of the Sorby ones with their slightly copper coloured finish. Can't remember what it's called. And it's the router jig, the Paul Howard router jig. If you're watching this before the 25th of February 2025 and you're not a newsletter subscriber, then subscribe to my newsletter quickly, and you should be able to access the link then to register for a free Zoom event that I'm doing on this router jig. The baseboard that I've got it on is just a little bit of Formica face chipboard. Couple of runners in there that I can use to position that fence that you can see to limit the depth of the cut. There are other ways of limiting the depth of the cut. This way is a quick and easy way of setting up the cutter. And you can see there that I've already cut one wide trench across the platter bowl, and a second thinner one. And now I'm thinking, needs a bit more. Could have left it at just 2. When do I ever leave something at just, that'll be enough? You know me, I always like to go a little bit too far. So a couple more cuts coming up. again, I try to avoid things being symmetrical. That's not to say that they shouldn't be done to a good standard. When I often talk about not being a big fan of precision or detail, that doesn't mean it should look ragged and rough. So I've got the lines cut, and then bit of pyrography coming up after I've done a little bit of cleaning up the surfaces and a little bit of sanding. This is one of 3 powered respirators I've got, this Trend Air Shield Pro. It's probably the quickest and easiest one to put on because all of it's contained within the helmet, but I have to say the 3M VersaFlow or the Sunstrom powered respirator, although they both have a belt battery pack, they're much more comfortable to wear for any length of time. Now, to stop myself bending over at my fixed headstock lathe, I've taken the chuck off and put it into the Simon Hope carving jig, and then it's a case of slowly, painstakingly trying to keep it neat, burning in dots with a little ball cutter. And this is with my new razor tip pyrography machine that I did a zoom on last month for my newsletter subscribers. It might work its way onto my YouTube channel at some point. I have heavily edited this. You can see each dot I want to place quite precisely. Not, if I wanted to be super precise, I would probably have to put some pencil lines down, but I wasn't going for a random pattern with this. I wanted to try to get something a little more organized. Now, one of the problems you can see there in that shot where I'm cutting now is it's quite difficult to avoid the side of the ball touching the side wall of those trenches. So that's something that I need to work on, maybe a different cutter tip, different technique, or texturing all the way up the sides as well. But I want to keep crisp edges, really. Getting the little hollow, off-center hollow textured, that was partly down to just, practicing a technique. You don't get good at anything unless you practice it, do you? You have to do it a lot of times to get a feel for it. Can't decide what to do next. I think I'm going to do something along the sides of those channels because they look a little uneven and a bit messy and ragged. Part of me is tempted to keep the bare wood, but I'm probably not going to, in the spirit of play and discovery and adventure and fun and regret. Right, so back to voiceover. Now, the burning is fairly even, fairly consistent, but you can see there are some lighter areas than others, and I remember watching a demo by Michael Keyes, who's a fantastic pyrographer. I think he uses India ink over the texture to get a uniform blackness. This is Chestnut spirit stains, obviously they're black. I put it all over. There was a nice little bit of ripple in this little bit of sycamore, and then sand off the top surface, and you can see there where the stain has soaked in to the open part of the ripple. Yellow spirit stain, application method, the most basic you can have, just putting some on a paper towel and wiping it over the surface. The more you put on, obviously the more saturated the colour gets, so I could have made the yellow bolder by putting more coats of that on, but I've swapped to some orange here, and I thought, well, I'll just mimic or echo those ripple lines with how I put the colour on. So rather than using a flat piece of paper towel here, I've put the colour on and then folded a line through that colour, doing the same here with some red by the look of things, possibly some orange, maybe the coat before was actually another coat of yellow. Looking at it more closely on the monitor now, I think it must have been, and this is some yellow going on. I wanted to try out different colours. So on the other 3 sections I've used blue and royal blue. And with that dabbing, if you apply the paper lightly, you don't get a uniform coverage. I rather like that mottled look. Again, the more coats you put on, the more you build up the saturation and intensity of the colour. But I think I got quite good results on this colour from maybe just 3 or 4 coats. So after I'd put the royal blue on, I went back with the ordinary blue, a bit more sort of turquoise blue, and then over the top of that you can see me very lightly dabbing some white stain on, which introduces a nice pastel element to the colour and really accentuates the mottling. Does it much better, I would say, on the blues than it does on the yellow, orange and red. As it dries, it sucks up the colour from underneath it. As you can see there, it goes on white but then becomes a pale blue. I seldom use green. I thought, oh, I wonder what green will do. So over these 2 smaller orange red sections, yellow sections, I put a bit of green on. Now I suppose we could get a little bit landscapey and talk about blue sea, green hills and a fiery sunset in the sky. But I think that's me being a little bit fanciful, really. Just doing a little bit of touch up with the colour. So this was a practice. It's a sort of mishmash of things. There are some problems with it, which I'll talk about at the end of the video, which I have alluded to already. But I wanted to see what kind of look I'd get with a shiny finish. It's very cold in the workshop this time of year, so I'm cheating and using a hairdryer to artificially dry the products that I'm using, which were Chestnut Products acrylic sanding sealer and now their satin lacquer. And that is the end of the voiceover. Right, so here it is, the finished piece, as finished as it gets. Warts and all, there's the back. I haven't done anything to remove the stain or clean that up. A few things, like I said in the commentary, that I need to work on. The side walls of these channels need to be clearer, cleaner. Putting some black ink on them does mask where the ball has cut them, so that looks a little bit better. Slight mismatch of some of the levels here, which I would like to avoid in future. Kind of, why does it have 2 holes? I mean, that is undercut a little bit. It's a little hollow, maybe a little nod to it being a wood turned item and me not being able to let go of there's got to be a hole in the middle. If I wanted to go for 2 holes, I think that one looks a little bit too far up to that edge. It doesn't really sit well in this particular area. This one doesn't do much for it. It may have been a better balance, better design if that was round here, slightly smaller, and this was a smaller hollow like this one, so that they, at least one was an echo of the other rather than being 2 completely different elements. That's the word. Which I think if you're taking your wood turning beyond something, I'm going to make a bowl, I'm going to make a plate, a pepper grinder, there are other things to consider. So for me, this is a miss as a finished piece, but an absolute winner for fun and trying out things and developing skills and seeing things I want to do more of in the future. So that's for me one of the more exciting pieces that I've made since I started wood turning, really. I seem to have hit a sort of vein of new ideas and new approaches and new things to try, but it's only taken nearly 2 years after retirement for my creative brain to kick into action. It's not bad, is it? There'll be a lovely big close-up of this for you to see at the end. And until until next time, thanks for watching. Oh, and at the end of this you'll see some of the horrific colour choices I also made. Who doesn't love a few bloopers at the end of a video? Really, thanks for watching.
Filled with footsteps and sand, and 1,000 reviews. There's a bar, to the pools they go. Was I on the label?